Well, good morning, YouTube friends. This is Sunday morning, July 7th, the year 2013, and this is Mess About One, known also as Richard Matthews, and I'm in Scottsboro, Alabama, in the northeast corner of the state of Alabama, in the United States of America. That's my geological location, in case you didn't know, in case you hadn't watched before. And I guess maybe some local people wonder why I would give that kind of information. And it's easy to think or not think about where viewers can be on a YouTube video. And I've found YouTube or Google YouTube has a system called analytics. It'll let a person that makes YouTube videos go back and look at statistics on the videos they've made. And I've been making YouTube videos now for just about, it'll be 7 years this month here in July. And I've learned that people from all over the world, even some countries that you might not think would be watching YouTube, watch some of these videos. So to me, it's always good to kind of give a location for people that maybe have not tuned into the channel before, and they might be watching this from somewhere in darkest Africa or the Middle East. I meant to make a list one time about all the places that have watched my videos, and it's worldwide. So sometimes when I say I'm in the United States of America, that's probably a good reference for people that might have tuned in for the first time. And where is this guy? Although you could probably tell by listening to me for a few minutes that I might be somewhere in the southeastern United States. And I'm in the deep south. Northeastern Alabama is in the middle of the deep south of the U.S. And you can probably tell by my accent that I might be in that area if you've heard a southern accent before. And I just had a little friend come up on the porch here with me. You may hear her or him in the background. I believe it's a him. I think his name is Clyde. A little tabby cat has just come up on the porch. Maybe he'll get up here. He may go off in the distance there. You can see Clyde here on the porch with me. But my exact location here in Scottsboro, of course, this area was settled almost 200 years ago, I guess. And of course, we had American pioneer settlers come in here, and they built log cabins and built dwellings and farm buildings out of whatever materials that were here. And I'm sitting, as you can see in the background, on a pioneer log cabin. We have a little park here in Scottsboro. They call it the Scottsboro Jackson County Heritage Center, and they have gathered some historic buildings from around the area and reconstructed them here on this site. And you probably can hear, if the audio is good enough, that it's raining here today, or I'd get out and walk around and show you some of the buildings. But I'm under a front porch on an old log cabin, and this log cabin is probably 150 years old, I'd say, probably at least. I think there's a placard here that tells the exact date on it. And Clyde is going back out in the rain and leaving me there, so he maybe doesn't want to be on camera this morning. Anyway, that's where I am. Like I said, it's a rainy morning here in northeastern Alabama. It has been raining constantly and very heavily here for about 4 days. And of course, Independence Day weekend, most people had maybe Thursday, Friday off, and then Saturday and Sunday. But it's kind of dampened our holiday plans here. We had planned to spend time out on the river and in the boat and do some boating, but all the rain has changed everybody's plans, and we've pretty well had to stay inside and out of the rain at least. We've had some breaks in it. It didn't rain quite as much as they said it might, but it's still raining, and I think the plans are, the forecast is it'll rain for another couple of days here. We've had plenty of rain. But I thought I'd choose this place because it is out of the rain, and it's just a good, quiet, peaceful place. It is in the city. The city of Scottsboro is about 15,000 people, small town. So it's in the city, not out in the country like I normally like to get. So you'll probably hear some louder vehicles running around You probably hear the rain on this tin roof up above me here on the log cabin, and you may even hear some other sounds. I think there's an air conditioner running that I hear from here, so you might hear that in the background, but still kind of a quiet and peaceful place. And I didn't have a whole lot planned on saying this morning. You know, I guess video producers maybe need to have inspiration, and sometimes I don't have inspiration. And sometimes I let the surroundings be my inspiration when I go out to make a video. And I guess this old log cabin would be my inspiration this morning. You know, I'm 67 years old, be 68 years old, of course, my birthday. And I was born right here in this area. I've never lived for very long outside of this county in Alabama. I'm lucky to be able to have found good work and work in this area my whole career. Started working in 1967 at a full-time engineering job, and I'm still working here in the year 2013, and not in the same city. I work in Huntsville, Alabama, and I'm still working in the same city I worked in that first job over all those years, however many years that is. That would be 46 years I've been working, still working full-time, not retired yet. But anyway, back to the log cabin. And this ties back to my roots, my country roots in this area. And considering I've only been on this planet for 67 years, to you young folks, that's going to sound like an awful long time. To your older folks, you're going to say, well, he hasn't been around too long. And a lot of people live to be in their 90s, so I guess I'm still a middle-aged man. At least, maybe I hope I am. But going back 67 years and show you how things have changed here in this county. Now we're in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, which was known to be one of the areas of the country that might have developed some years behind the rest of the country due to its geographical location being remote in the mountain area. So I guess things may have developed around here slower than it did. I know it did slower than it did in the big cities of the country. But 67 years ago, I was born in a log cabin much like this one. Now some people say, guy must think he's Abraham Lincoln or something, but it's true. And in some of my former videos, I've gone back and explained why I was born in a log cabin. I guess it's because where my parents were living at the time. But it was a log cabin much like this one. And if you'll look on behind me here, you'll see these are what is called hand-hewn logs. And that means that they weren't mill cut. It means that the people that built these log cabins, the pioneers or farmers or land owners that built these log cabins, went out. And this area was widely, heavily wooded when white men first came into this area. I heard a statement one time, and I think it was written by some of the early pioneers. It said a squirrel could get in the trees on the East Coast at the Atlantic Ocean and go tree to tree without touching the ground all the way to the Mississippi River. And that's over several states. If you did that in this area, the squirrel would start at the Atlantic Ocean over on the coast of Georgia. He would have to come across Georgia, across Alabama, and across Mississippi to get to the Mississippi River. So that'd be quite a big forest. But they said this was virgin forest in here, where you had huge, big trees, and the old trees were so created such a canopy that the underbrush was not fully developed. You didn't have a lot of small underbrush, and it was kind of a clearing, like a forest, and it was big trees and not a lot of small bushes and trees like we have now. Which this area, a lot of it's been cleared through the years from taking of trees. But anyway, back to my story on building the log cabins. They went out in this big forest, found the correct kind of big trees, cut those trees down, and using saws and axes. They had no mechanical equipment for sure. They had no lifts or cranes or anything like that, but just through pure manpower, they went out and cut these trees and trimmed them down, called hewing them down, and shaped them to make these logs to build their houses out of. And I wish I may get around and try to take a picture, a video of how the logs were cut so they would fit together at the ends. There's actually a little locking mechanism at the end of the logs that when they stack them up, it locks the ends of the logs together to keep them from shifting around. And if you'll notice here about my neck level, you see a gap between those logs. So they couldn't fit them because the logs would move some after they were cut and put into the building, and they started drying. The gap would vary. So they took and did what it was called chinking in between these logs to close up that airspace, and they usually did that with some kind of mud or clay. This one I think is done with concrete, so it's a little more permanent than those early cabins. But the early cabins had kind of a dirt clay chinking in between the logs to seal it up. And this area is also very heavily populated in limestone outcroppings. Limestone rocks are easy to find here. So what they would do is go in and level a place for the cabin. It might not be level because sometimes they build on the base of the mountain, but they would build limestone rock footings that would come up and give them a level base to start laying the base logs on before they started building the log cabin up. And they would even chip or shape the limestone and make blocks out of it for chimneys. And again, I may try to get around and show you the chimney on this particular log cabin. It's limestone rocks that have been shaped to make big blocks that they built the chimneys out of. So they were hard workers first off, and they were skilled at what they did, being able to use their axes and saws and chisels and hammers and build their own cabin. And it, nowadays, I know my house is that way, and a lot of your houses or homes are the same way. The facilities you have in a house are just very complicated. When you look at all the plumbing and wiring and electrical and communication, internet facilities and wires and devices that you have in your house, it's very, very complicated. A lot of things to maintain, a lot of things we use nowadays. But if you go back and look at these basic log cabins, and even the one I was born in, they had no electricity, so that meant no wiring into the cabin. They had no inside plumbing, so that meant no piping in the cabin. Their lighting was through what they call coal oil lamps or lanterns that burned a fossil fuel. To heat the thing, they used wood or coal in the fireplace, which meant there wasn't any kind of ventilation system in the cabin. The kitchens were very basic. They might have had a table, a counter, some cabinets maybe, but no stove. They usually cooked off the fireplace, the heat from the fireplace. And for sure there was no refrigeration. Usually they would build cabins close to a stream, a cold spring, and they would dam up a little area in that cold spring, and they would take their products like milk and butter and such things as that might spoil in the hot summertime. And they had an area in that spring where they would keep in glass jugs. They'd keep their things that might spoil, so they would keep a little longer. And you'll hear, I started saying you'd hear in the background, I'm about 3 blocks from our county courthouse square here, and it has an old clock. It used to be a Seth Thomas clock in the tower, in the dome of the courthouse, and that thing rings on the hour, the number of hits on the bell for the hour, but on 30 minutes it hits 1 hit, and it just hit 1 hit. I don't know if you heard it or not. And I noticed in my camera monitor that Clyde is back, and he was right over in there. I don't know if you noticed him or not. He's kind of a reddish, blondish colored cat. We call them tabby cats, I guess is the correct name. But he's sitting right down here at my left foot, and I can pet him on the back with my foot. He's down there kind of cleaning this morning. And I wish Clyde would come over this way. I'd let you look at him. I think it's Clyde. He does have a pink collar on, so that makes me wonder. Maybe Clydette instead of Clyde. But I think his name is Clyde, unless they've changed cats here at the Heritage Center. And he is I don't know if he's appreciating I guess that's a flea collar he has on his neck. He's kind of king of the cabin here. Now I imagine he finds a few mice around the cabin. Maybe he's a mouser to keep the cabin cleaned up. Back to what I was saying before I started talking about the clock ringing. I was talking about the facilities in the cabin. And before I noticed Clyde, he come up on the porch here again. But anyway, those people lived a very simple life. And my family didn't live in that cabin very long. I was born in November, so it had been cold winter time when I was born there. And that old cabin bound to have been very, very uncomfortable. But you know, people back then were tougher. My mother and dad grew up during the Depression, so they had grown up with some tough times, and they understood life wasn't easy. And I think that toughens people. And when you have to live in those conditions, I know people that have gone off to war or lived in bad conditions pretty well adapt to what they have to live with. And I suppose they did the same thing, and we did as kids. I lived for a good part of my boyhood. We moved out on the farm at one point and had no running water in the house, had outdoor toilet facilities, and we had to draw water out of the well and things like that. But I don't think at the time, didn't have any air conditioning, I do remember that, but I don't think at the time we saw it as all that bad. When you reference and go back and look at it compared to how we live now, it was terrible. It was very uncomfortable. But again, people toughen up to bad situations or to different situations. And I had a conversation not long ago with somebody that whether we would be able to go back and live like that again. But it'd be rough if you had to take, from day to day, if you had to take everything away that we have in our homes in a modern house, and you had to come back and live in this cabin with no modern conveniences. Some of us would be in bad state. You know, there's people around that call themselves survivalists now that are trying to prepare for if times do ever go back to not so luxurious times that they'll be able to make it. I suppose if you've done it before, you're a lot more likely to be able to adjust to it again. And it's surprising sometimes how little you can get by with it and be happy. We didn't have a whole lot growing up as far as material things. We had a good family, had good parents and good relatives. At least most of them were good relatives. I won't claim all of them were, but that helps a lot to have good close friends and family. So we adjusted to it. So that's where I am this morning, and I wish I could get out and show you around, but it's dripping and just messy here. And old Clyde's out there doesn't seem to mind the rain at all. Now for a cat, you'd think he'd stay out of the rain, but they have little brick walkways around the center here, and he's out walking around making his morning. He's the security cat, I guess. He's out making his morning rounds. But I think I've taken some pictures down here. If you want to look back in my other videos, I've taken some pictures here. I even did one down here a few years ago. They had a kind of a Heritage Day or something here at the center, and they had some bluegrass bands playing around the grounds, and had some old crafts, old skills that people had. Here behind me they have an old blacksmith shop. They've gathered up a whole lot of old blacksmith tools, and they had a demo there of a person that still knew how to do ironworking, blacksmithing, come in and do that. They have an old schoolhouse over to my left that has some furniture and things that a pioneer teacher might have used. The old original county courthouse is sitting off behind the camera there, and it's just a real small little building. I'll try to take a photo of it after I finish gabbing here, but it's there, and it has some of the early county records in it. It was one of the first courthouses, I think, in the county. And another cabin or two. There's a cabin off to my right, and there's a barn. You can't see the barn off to my left, but there's a log barn off to my left. And all these things have some things in it that might have come out of that era, the pioneer era. And there's a lot of split rail fences around that they have reconstructed, split cedar fences. And it's just a nice place to come and visit. So I've about run out of something to say this morning, and I just wanted to come in and take a little time on this quiet, rainy, summer, Sunday morning and visit with you just a bit. I'm still picking up a few more subscribers, and that always pleases me. I don't know what the exact count is now, but I'm nearing 1,200 subscribers. Now, I don't know how many are still active, subscribers, that they're still in the list. And those are people that I've gathered throughout the 7 years that I've been on YouTube. So it's getting right at 1,200 subscribers. And as I said, I think in my last video, usually I'll have 200 or 300 views. And I guess that's not bad. If you think about going out and say you wanted to have a meeting, if you had 200 or 300 people show up, that would be a pretty good little meeting. Be worthwhile of you presenting whatever you want to present, and maybe worthwhile for the people that attended. Yeah, I always kind of worry about that. Is what you're saying is of any interest to anybody, especially when you have a worldwide viewing audience. But on my last video, I had some, and I thank all of you for those very nice compliments. Right now I don't remember the compliments, but I remember some of my British friends had compliments about the history. And I guess it's nice. I enjoy looking and seeing other YouTube producers, video makers, when they tell me things about their local area that I might not have heard on TV or seen in the news or even read in the history books. And I think it means more if you have a local person maybe sitting in a local area, a local scene, and describing maybe some history from that area. And that was the compliments I had on that last video, that people enjoyed hearing local Jackson County, Alabama history. And although I noticed in that last video I made some pretty good mistakes in it, and you can't go back and correct those mistakes after you upload the thing. You can in a way, but it's still mistakes. And then one of the things I said in that last video was I was calling it was made in June, and I was calling it July, but that's just a slip of the tongue. I knew it was June, or maybe I did. And some other things, some dates, when you're giving history dates just off the top of your mind, top of your head, they are off some, and some of my dates are off a little bit. Some people that's real important. To other people it could care less, but I don't do these videos from a script. I'd never get them done if I had to script everything I say. So I just do it off the top of my head, ad lib, I think they call it, and just sometimes I'll get dates messed up, and sometimes I'll ramble and carry on. But that's the way I do videos, and people seem to be okay with that. For sure, I'm not a pro. Don't have any plans to be a pro and do these things. It's funny. Notoriety, I guess. Now I've had it happen a few times. I have some local people that have picked up on my videos, and they found that I make local history and scenic videos of this area. And I was walking up on our town square the other day and about to walk across the street, and I noticed this pickup truck coming around the corner very slow, and I was going to walk diagonally across that corner, and he stopped right in the corner, and I thought, that's kind of strange. And he rolled down his window, and usually when somebody does that around here, they're asking directions or something. And this guy rolled, and I don't know who he was. I wish I'd asked his name, but he rolled down his window and he said, I watched your video about I did it on the river, about the river at Bellefonte the other day. So I really enjoyed that. That kind of does you good when you have local people in person that'll recognize you for what you do, and then give you a compliment too. So I get feedback from around the world, and guys across the street too, and maybe that'll guide me in producing something that's worth watching. Anyway, I'm going to get away from the camera here, and I'm going to turn around and show you some of the things I mentioned, and maybe be quiet a little bit and let you hear the raindrops on this tin roof. Kind of made me sleepy sitting here this morning, even though I haven't been out of bed long. It's early in the morning. It's about, I think, 7:30 when that courthouse clock rang a little while ago. That was 7:30 a.m. on this July 7th. I think I got that date right. So I'm going to turn the camera around and show you some of these fixtures on this log cabin, and I'll probably be back on a little later. Supposed to go on vacation, not this week, but the following week down to our Alabama Gulf Coast. And I plan to take the camera with me, but depending on activities, whether I'll use it a lot or not, we'll see. I might try to make a video too from the beach. We're going to a place in Alabama called Gulf Shores. Beautiful area. It was voted, here I go rambling again, but I'll tell you one more thing. It was voted in some kind of poll over the last few weeks as the cleanest beach in the United States of America. Now, that's a pretty good compliment if you think about it, because there's a lot of beaches when you consider the coastline in this country from Maine all the way around, skip Mexico and up the California coast to Washington coast. There's a lot of coastline in this little beach that we're going to. It's Alabama has maybe, I don't know, even though it's 100 miles of coastal area down around Mobile. We've got a huge bay, which is Mobile Bay. But when you leave Mississippi and go to the panhandle of Florida, we don't have a whole lot of beach front compared to, say, Florida, which has an enormous amount. But that area, which is it'd be a little bit east of Mobile Bay, is voted the cleanest beach in the United States. And that's quite an accomplishment, because if you remember back just a few years ago, that's where we had the big British BP oil spill off the coast. So they've done a real good job of cleaning up the coastal area there to be complimented. That's where we'll be week after next. Okay, I'm gone, and I'll turn it around and let you see the other things. Goodbye.